Oh, Covey, we can't fit it in there. Look at that. It won't fit. The power ring is touching the back, and I can't slide it back far enough before it touches the bell. We're screwed, dude. Yeah, we're not going to fit that on there. Darn. Hi everyone, Ron Spomer here with a bit of a problem. I'm trying to scope this E.R. Shaw rifle with this Tract Toric scope. Can't get the two to fit. So we've got a long action here, and the span exceeds what we can do because the power ring is so big it hits the back of the integral Picatinny rail. Doggone it. So I've got to play around with some more options on my scope rings. But before I do that, I want to talk to you about some projects we're going to be working on. Now, one of them is obviously this rifle, and it's pretty cool. I'm excited about it because it's chambered for something you probably haven't seen before. 25-06 Ackley Improved. And the Ackley Improved is essentially a standard cartridge like the 25-06 Remington, in which the case is blown out, straighter walls, and a sharper shoulder, 40 degrees. So you can shoot the standard ammunition in that rifle, and that fire forms it to the new shape. Then you can hand load it and pick up a little more velocity. But the biggest advantage is you get less flow in the neck, less neck stretching, so you don't have to trim as much and your brass lasts longer. Mainly though, I wanted it so I could say, nah, 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 I've got something you don't. I mean, that's kind of what drives a lot of us gun nuts. We just like to try something different. And I was able to do that because Shaw is a custom barrel maker, and they make barrels for lots of different rifle companies, but they'll make one for you, and they'll even build a complete rifle like this. And you know, to my eye, this is getting to be pretty close to a beautiful rifle. It's got some nice walnut in the stock and some nice checkering. There are a few things I wouldn't like about it, like this quick release on, well, we'll get into all that when we review the rifle. So stay tuned. At some point, we are going to actually get this thing scoped up and shot. You can see how fast we can drive those bullets. Now, what I'm wanting to do with bullets is increase my wind resistance, the wind deflection with a high BC bullet. The 25-06 is sort of suffering right now because nobody makes high BC bullets for it. This is kind of your standard top of the line heavy bullet for a 25-06. It's 120 grains. 117, 120, that's usually the top end. Why? Because you can't stabilize because of the standard twist rates in 25-06s. You can't stabilize longer bullets. And the long bullet I want to stabilize is this one. And this is from Ace. And it's a 131 grain bullet. And it doesn't come in a very fancy package. They call it Blackjack bullets. Ace Blackjack, 131 grain bullet. And I think this BC on this guy is getting up close to 6, which is getting up there in that range of the 6.5. So we are able to do that because Shaw built me a fast twist barrel, 1 and 7.5 inches. So every 7.5 inches, we get a complete twist, and that's what you need to stabilize long, sleek, pointed bullets like this with that long boat tail on the end. Just won't do it with your standard bullets. So that's the project. That's the whole idea there, right, Covey? Yeah. Good girl. Leave those bullets alone. So before I can shoot that rifle, I've got to get a scope on it, and this is the one I was hoping to put on it, a Tract Toric. The problem is I can't fit it on with the rings that I've got. So I'm going to have to probably order custom rings. I'll check with Tally and see if they can build something that'll fit for me. But meanwhile, I want to tell you about this scope. I got interested in the Tract scopes because I had tried their binoculars, and I was really, really impressed with the optical quality and the functional quality of those binoculars. Just felt like it was top-line stuff at low prices because they sell direct to the consumer. You skip the middleman, and that means you're skipping up those markups at the shop or wherever you buy your optics. So instead of a 10, 20, 30, even 50% markup, you're getting dealer direct, which is pretty nice. So you can pick this thing up for around $750 to $800 range, I think. And it is what I consider to be a pretty good middle of the road all around scope for general big game hunting. Pronghorn, deer, elk, moose. you name it. And it is built on a 1-inch scope tube. Now, I don't want to lose you here because a lot of guys now are thinking 1-inch tubes, man, that's old stuff. I want the 30 millimeter tube or the 34 millimeter tube because I'm going to get a brighter image. No, you're not. Brightness is not a product of the main tube diameter. It's a product of the objective lens diameter divided by the magnification, the power. That gives you the exit pupil that has to match yours. So let's turn this thing down and see our exit pupil is at 3. Huge exit pupil. 3 goes into 42 how many times? 10 plus. So that's bigger than the pupil in my eyeball can even dilate. Now if I start increasing my power, that little exit pupil gets smaller and smaller. And at some point, it's going to get smaller than my pupil, or my pupil is going to shrink down in bright daylight and match up pretty nicely. But what we're concerned about is late or early, before the sun's up, after the sun is down. Can we see? That's when we want brightness. And all you do to increase brightness is increase the diameter out here, which we can't do once we've got our scope mounted, or decrease the power here, which we can do. So you're going to lose a little magnification in low light, but you can get the brightness back up there by increasing the diameter of the exit pupil. So I have found in nearly 5 decades of big game hunting that I can target all the animals in legal shooting light with a scope like this. I don't need a 56 millimeter objective, and I get no advantage from a 34 millimeter main tube, so why put up with the bulk and the weight? This to me is just about the right size for a general purpose hunting scope. It's even a little more powerful than I really would need, but hey, if you these days can get a scope that has a 5x magnification range from 3 to 15 for about the same price as an old 3 to 9, why not? So here it is. Weighs 20 ounces, a little bit more than I'd like to see in a scope, but for your general purpose hunting, as long as you're not sheep climbing or mountain goats, probably easily carried. And on average weight rifle, you're probably looking at a package deal of around 8 to 9 pounds. Pretty much what we've been carrying for years. So how good is this scope? That's really the question. I always say the most important job a scope has is to direct your bullet to the target, which means you zero that scope and it should stay zeroed, shot after shot, year after year, not wander around. That's its main function. Aside from optical quality. I mean, I have looked through some pretty crappy scopes for optical quality. As long as I can see the crosshair on the animal, even if it's a little fuzzy or a little dim, as long as that crosshair stays where the bullet's going to fly every time, it's going to work. Now, let's get better optical quality. Well, you're getting it right here. They use shot HT high transmission glass throughout. It's about the best you can get as far as I know. And they put fully multi-coated optics. That means every one of those lenses, air to glass surfaces, has anti-reflection coatings, and that's essential for maximum light transmission. Makes a huge difference, even more important than a bigger objective. That controls your light. So you get increased transmission, decreased flare and glare. So if you don't have those anti-reflection coatings on the surfaces inside as well as out, you're not going to get the brightest possible image and you're going to start to see flare. Well, with this guy, even looking towards the sun, the flare is extremely well controlled. I don't get that orange haze all over everything. The contrast stays up. And contrast is important because it enables us to see the difference between subtle shades of color. So let's say in the shadows with the sun shining toward your rifle and your lens, not necessarily directly on it, but getting there, you're looking for a deer coming out of the edges in those shadows. And you might see antlers mixed in with the branches. Well, if you've got high contrast and good flare control, you're going to be able to detect the difference in the tones between the antler and the branches. In most cases, that's the value of a high contrast scope. This has it. So what else are we looking for in a scope? Well, you might get some ED glass. What's ED? Extra low dispersion. That means you are minimizing color fringing, and you get color fringing at your higher magnifications. And what it does is it puts a bit of a halo around your subject. So instead of having that crisp, sharp outline object that you're looking at, it's kind of soft and fuzzy. Don't want that? Put in ED glass. This has it. It's probably a fluorite glass element. Takes care of that color fringing problem. So then we're going to look at the parallax control. Parallax is for adjusting parallax out of your scope. If you don't know what parallax is, check my channel. You'll find some explanations on there. I don't want to get into it all now, but it's important for precision shooting at long range if you don't get your eye perfectly centered in the scope. So you can dial for whatever range. It's essentially focusing the image perfectly onto the reticle. That's important. This is a second focal plane scope. That means the reticle is sitting back here, not up here. And when you change your power, you do not change the size of the reticle. It stays the same. So you can dial from infinity all the way down to 10 yards or a little less. Now, why would you want to dial your focus down to 10 yards? For me personally, I like it for a 22 rimfire and squirrel hunting. Small game hunting for tiny targets, you're sometimes looking at just the top of a squirrel peeking over a limb. And with a high magnification, you can see that, but it needs to be in focus. With most big game scopes, parallax is set or focus is set at 100 yards, and you're looking at a squirrel that's probably 20 yards away. Handy to be able to dial it down for that sharp focus. So that's the value of that close range stuff. Magnification, we've already covered, 3x. I have not met a big game animal that I cannot get the crosshair on, even at 10, 15 yards. And I've jumped a few elk and deer at some pretty close ranges. And at 3x, when I throw that rifle up, they're in the scope. I can tell where the chest is at 3x easily. So that's about as low a power as I need. And then you crank your power up. And if you're really reaching out there, 15x will certainly do the job for you. Now, eye relief is important because you don't want that scope coming back and hitting you in the brow and getting cut. Two ways that happens. One, you mount your scope way forward. Well, you can't do that because you get the edge blackout. So you have eye relief coming back to what? About 4 inches is really good. We generally say try to get 3 to 3.5 inches. 3.5 is better than 3, but on a light kicking scope, 3 is good. Well, on a light kicking rifle, 3 is good. Well, this thing is more like 4. It's 3.9, 3.8. But that's from the glass to your eyeball, not what's going to kick you in the head. And that's this eye ring out here. So there's about a 1/4 inch lost right there. So realistically, you're getting closer to 3.5 inches of eye relief on this for not getting bonked in the brow during recoil. I find that over the years has been plenty. So you've got good eye relief on here for even hard kicking rifles. I think I mentioned that the scope weighs 20 ounces, maybe 20.1. Little bit heavy for this size of scope, but right in the ballpark. Anything else that I didn't mention? Oh, the purging. Most scopes are purged with nitrogen gas, and some of them advertise argon gas as superior. This one is purged with argon gas. What does purging mean? That means that they push argon gas in here to drive out the oxygen and the moisture. Argon gas is like moisture and argon don't mix. So if the argon is there, the moisture is gone. That means your scope is going to be fog proof, not going to internally fog up when the temperatures change. Externally, yeah, it still will. Any glass surface is going to do that externally, but that will keep the fog proof what you want, and it'll last for a good long time. Honestly, I have not found in my research that the argon gas is vastly superior to nitrogen. Some say the nitrogen molecules are smaller than the argon, so they're going to leak out a little earlier as your rings and seals start to degrade over time. They'll dry out a little bit, and eventually that gas is going to leak out. We're talking atomic structure here, tiny, tiny, tiny. But that's going to be decades till it happens, and I don't think there's a huge advantage. But either way, this argon gas is nice for keeping it fog-proof. Externally, you're going to be able to drop this guy into water because it's waterproof down to, 3 meters. I haven't even really looked, but generally all the scopes these days are good for about that. Which means hunt in the rain and the snow, no problem. Probably don't want to roll your boat with it, but it might last for a while doing that too. You can see here on the power ring, there's a little button. You could take a wrench and take that off. I'm sure there's threads in there, and you could put a throw lever on if you're into doing that. And it moves nicely, it's smoothly. No friction at all that's rattling or grabbing. Not too tight, just about right. I think that's just about perfect. The diopter adjustment is really hard, and I like that because I don't want to bump it accidentally. It doesn't lock, unlike this. This baby locks, And that's important too. You make your adjustment. I would generally carry this at about 100 yards for general purpose. Lock it in. You don't have to worry about bumping it and losing your focus. Now, the scope is set up with quarter click adjustments. It's an MOA dial. So if you're looking at the dial and on 0 now, you could dial this scope out for as many MOA as you need, out to 20. It's got a 20 MOA dial on there. And you can dial up 2, that's 2 MOA, 3, 4, wherever you need to go. But if you want to go farther, you can get, and it comes with the scope, it's actually in the box. Where is that guy? Yeah, right here. It comes with a turret kit, and it's a little bit taller turret kit so you can have it locking. 0 stop is what it does. So if you're making adjustments to shoot, you want to come back to 0 every time. This allows you to do that. You cannot go past 0. Click, comes right back into 0. So this is your standard. If you don't like it, take it off, replace it with this one. You've got your 0 stop. It's just a little bit taller. You can also get custom. So if you like the ballistics of a particular load and bullet, and you know that, give these folks that information, muzzle velocity and whatnot, and the ballistics of your bullet, your BC. They're going to build you a turret that matches exactly the trajectory of that bullet. Put that on your scope, and then you're dialing up exactly where you need to go. That works great as long as you don't go from, let's say, sea level to 10,000 feet, because then things change a little bit and that won't work. So something to think about. Now, inside of the scope, you can get a couple of different reticles. This one is their BDC style. So I don't really even need to worry about dialing out to about 600 yards, probably 800 yards with something like, say, a 7mm Remington Magnum, because the reticle shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 extra hash marks down, and they've got 10-mile-an-hour right angle windage on dots on the sides all the way down as well. So lots of opportunities there for working with a ballistic reticle. And if you combine that with some dialing, you can really reach out there. I mean, 20 MOA here plus however MOA are covered on that out to 600 yards. That's a lot of reach. It's further than I ever need to shoot. So what else can I tell you about this Toric scope other than their guarantee, which is pretty nice? You know, instead of saying this is guaranteed for workmanship and materials for a year or even 5 years, they just guarantee the scope forever. Essentially, they guarantee it to continue to work unless you drive nails with it or drive over it or something. I don't know. And that's not just for the original buyer, you know, you could sell it to your brother-in-law or a guy down the street. As long as it's a tracked scope and whoever has it says this scope isn't dialing properly or something's broke, they're going to make it right. Either they're going to repair it or give them a new one. I'm not sure, but it sounds like a pretty nice guarantee. You might just get on their website and check it out. But I'm just really impressed with this company all the way around. I like their prices. I like the quality. Everything seems stiff and just precise. You just listen to those clicks. They're crisp. There's no slop in there anywhere. They come right back. I can't wait to get this on a rifle, preferably this one if I can, and do some shooting, and we'll show you how well it does dialing. I'll bet you we can shoot the square and dial it up 10, 20 MOA and come right back and it's going to be there. That's a sign of a really well-adjusted scope. So that's the Tract Toric. If you're looking for a good buy and a really high quality scope, you might want to check these guys out. Meantime, stay tuned and we're going to see if we can't wrap this thing up with some shooting. But in case we don't get around to it, I would like to invite you to subscribe to this channel. And you can find me on RonSpomerOutdoors.com, our website. Also on Facebook and Instagram, and we're starting something new this year. It's called Patreon, and you can subscribe. You get a little app for your phone or your computer called Patreon, and that allows you to support us financially with a small contribution, and that helps us fund the production of these videos and our website writing and all the information that we like to bring to you. So we'd appreciate your support if you could join Patreon. In the meantime, hunt honest and shoot straight. Hey, look at what I found. Some rings that are actually going to fit. Look at there, I've got plenty of clearance, got good room. I just needed that extension. That was a lucky find. These are some old Simmons rings. I think they called them 4x4 back in the day. like a 6-inch up. So I'll dial down. Looks like I got about a 1-inch group there, maybe 3/4, somewhere in that range. So I think I'm going to dial up about 10 and see where it lands. Well, I went out to tape some holes and realized that if I go 10 inches up, 10 minutes of angle, I'm going to be at the top edge of my target. So I'm going to come down to 8. So this should land 8 inches up. This scope is accurate. Tab change that. And then from our 8, let's go back down to 0. And this should drop into our original group of 3. But before I do that, why don't we go out there and look at it so you can see what's going on. And then we'll watch that last one. Just so you know I'm not pulling your leg. This is my first group. First shot, second shot, third shot. I was aiming right here. So I turned it 8 MOA. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, that's within the 1-inch or so grouping of that rifle. Bingo, straight up. That's my 8 adjustment. Then I went over 4, 16 clicks. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, about 3/4 off would accommodate something like that. So the scope is doing its trick just like it's supposed to. Now I'm going to bring that, I brought it over. Now I'm going to bring it back down. Aim here, and we should put another hole somewhere in here. Haha, right there. Right where I was aiming. Sweet. This scope really seems to be doing the job. I don't know what more I can tell you about this Tract Toric. Obviously, I could do a whole bunch more twisting and dialing and turning, but man, just knowing the kind of precision this company puts into its optical instruments and the basic results I got right here, this is going to do the job. If you want to test your own scopes, you can burn a lot of ammunition doing it. And one of the ways is similar to what I'm doing right here. Get zeroed, figure out what sort of accuracy that, what sort of grouping your rifle does. Shoot a group, move 8 MOA, 12 MOA, whatever you want to test. Aim at the same spot you did for that first group. Shoot another 3-shot group, and it should cluster to whatever distance you moved it, up, down, sideways, whatever. You can shoot what we call the square, where you go up 10, over 10, down 10, and back 10. It should come right back to the same point. I did roughly that with this by going up 8, over 4, back 4, down 8. It is consistent. It's got good, firm, consistent snaps when I make my adjustments. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean this barrel, do some more work on this rifle, and with the scope, I am then going to put on my taller turret so I've got a 0 stop, and I will eventually do some distance shooting out to 400, 600 yards, somewhere in that range. But eventually we're going to have this 25-06 Ackley improved ER Shaw rifle shooting precisely at some pretty considerable distances. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what those hand loads will do with that 131 grain bullet from Ace. That blackjack bullet sounds like a winner to me. Hope so. Hi everyone. Hey, I want to explain a little bit about what was going on. It got a little dark on me last night and I didn't get a good explanation of the target. So here's what happened. I aimed here and shot a 3-shot group, 1, 2, 3. I then adjusted 8 MOA up with that toric scope and I hit here. Perfect. That suggests it's dialing just as it should. Then I went 4 MOA over and hit here, which falls within the group ability of that rifle. Hit there, dialed it back 4, did not shoot, came down and fired again at this aiming point and hit here. So the entire time I was holding here to shoot, got my group holding here, made my adjustment, and I still aimed here, hit up here, hit over here, always aiming right there. That tells me the scope is going where it's supposed to when I dial it. So the nice thing about all this is that I'm fire forming brass. I'm taking a 25-06 factory cartridge and I'm firing it in a chamber that's been enlarged to fit the Ackley improved version of the 25-06, which has straighter walls and a sharper shoulder. Considering we don't have a precise fit and everything, that's remarkable accuracy in a new rifle that I'm just beginning to work with. And the scope is dialing just as it should. I'm just really impressed with this whole setup. I'm going to do some more work with it, but for now, that is my review of the Toric by Tract, a scope I highly recommend.